All right, welcome to lecture 32, the last lecture, Supported Rotating Bodies, part 1 for Kinesiology 2241A Biomechanics. The reading for this is chapter 16, which is the last chapter of the book, so you've gone right through that whole thing. Okay, so what we're talking about today is supported rotation. What we've been talking about in the last couple of lectures is free rotation, or freely rotating bodies, where they're rotating about the center of mass. And this is what occurs when you cannot apply reaction forces onto the body. It's in the air, it's on ice, no reaction forces are acting on the body, and so you get a free rotation about the center of mass. That is not what we're talking about today. Today, you are in contact with the ground, and so, or with a piece of apparatus. And so long as you're in contact with the ground or that apparatus, the center of rotation can be something other than the center of mass. But in order to maintain that, you have to have reaction forces. As soon as those reaction forces go, you immediately revert to rotating about the center of mass. So if we look at this example here, we have a gymnast. She's moving from left to right. So she starts out as a back handspring. Her hands are on the ground, shown by the red circle on the left-hand side. And so long as her hands are on the ground, reaction forces can be applied to her hands from the ground. And the center of rotation is that black dot at the center of the red circle on the left-hand side. And she's doing supported rotation about her hands and wrists. This can only occur because her hands are in contact with the ground. Now, if you look at the middle diagram, the instant her hands leave the ground and her feet are still in the air, she rotates about her center of mass. So she's generated a certain amount of angular momentum on the left-hand side. Her hands have been on the ground. It's supported rotation about her hands and wrists. Then as soon as they leave the ground, free rotation about the center of mass. And then on the right-hand side, her feet hit the ground at the black dot. Reaction forces are now applied to her feet, and rotation now occurs about her foot. So it's a supported rotation on the right-hand side. So you have to have reaction forces or contact with the ground or with some apparatus in order to have supported rotation. Now the trick here is, let's say we're on a single bar and the athlete is doing a full rotation about the bar, holding on with their hands and feet. What she can do is generate angular momentum because reaction forces are being applied into the body via the bar. And so she's rotating in a clockwise manner, and she makes sure that when she's on the downward motion, that she makes her body longer, further away from the bar by straightening the legs. And then when she's on the upward rotation, she bends the knees and shortens the body in towards the bar. And what this does is it means you have more torque on the downward route and less torque on the upward route, meaning you can actually generate angular momentum to do a clockwise rotation. And if you watch gymnasts, they do this very subtly to maintain that rotation or to increase their angular acceleration as they go around the bar. All right, so if we watch this video here, we have a gymnast who is swinging underneath the bar. And this is a very good example of both supported rotation when he's underneath the bar and free rotation of his body when he's above the bar. So notice as he's going down underneath the bar, his hands are holding onto the bar and very large reaction forces are going through his hands. He's a very strong man. And you can even see the bar bend downwards as he applies action forces downwards into it. Now what those reaction forces that are at his hands are doing are forcing his body to rotate about his hands. His body does not want to rotate about his hands. It wants to rotate about his center of mass. But so long as he's holding onto the bar, very large reaction forces force the body to rotate about the hands. But as soon as he flips up around the other side and lets go of the bar, notice that he immediately starts rotating about his center of mass. So above the bar, free rotation about the center of mass. There are no reaction forces applied to the body. And then once he grabs the bar again, he now rotates in supported rotation about his hands. So the athlete is able to do this, and it doesn't just have to be done about a single axis. You could do multiple axes at the same time, and it's maintained because reaction forces are applied somewhere onto the body. And so if we have an athlete who's mounting up onto the rings, we start with position A, where he's totally laid out and hanging behind the rings, and then he wants to curl up both at the hips and then at the shoulders and to get into the position B that you see on the right-hand side. Then we've got two rotations. They occur in sequence, but you can have two rotations, both of which are not the center of mass because reaction forces are going through the hands. So first of all, he starts swinging at the hip and then rotating at the shoulder to get into that position, position B. And here's an example of that. So notice that we're rotating about multiple joints, multiple axes, as the athlete goes from the start position, just hanging straight down from the rings, to that position there in a horizontal position. Only possible because very large reaction forces are going through the hands. One of those hands slips off, it's game over. And the athlete's gonna flip and fall and start rotating about a totally different axis that they don't intend. And so with supported rotation, we do not have constant angular momentum. Angular momentum does not need to be conserved. And the reason for that is you can do work on the system through those reaction forces. And so as an athlete, for instance, does a great circle on the bar in the diagram here, you're being worked on by gravity, and gravity will cause a torque about the center of rotation because the center of rotation is the bar, the hands, and not the center of mass. Whereas with a free rotation, weight or the gravity vector did not cause a torque because the gravity vector acted at the center of mass, and in free rotation, you're rotating about the center of mass. And in this case, gravity can actually create torque and then change your angular momentum as you go down. So when you're at the very top of this great circle, position F, you have very little angular momentum. When you're at position C, down below, you've got a lot of angular momentum, and it changes constantly between those two positions based on where you are in the great circle. Now you also have resistive forces acting on you. So long as you're in contact with the bar, and so long as you're moving quickly enough, in this case, we're going to have both friction forces, where the hand holds onto the bar or holds onto the apparatus, and we're also going to have air resistance or fluid forces acting on the body because the athlete is moving through air at a fast enough speed that aerodynamic drag is going to be significant. And so as you're performing these activities, you're going to use the torque created by weight and the variable angular momentum to overcome these resistive forces that are slowing you down. So if we use this example here, the diagram I showed you 2 slides ago is bottom left, a little smaller, where we're doing a great circle completely symmetrical. Now in the presence of those resistive forces, so air friction or air drag, friction at the bar, that great circle is going to slow down because you're forever losing angular momentum to the friction. And so what they actually do as an athlete when they're doing a great circle is they will slightly change the configuration of the body. So on your way down, you're slightly longer and create more torque. On your way up, you're slightly shortened with the hips flexed or the knees bent, and create less torque on your way up. And that way, you create a net torque in the clockwise direction, which overcomes the resistive forces that are acting in the opposite direction. So gymnasts are very good at disguising that asymmetry and looking like they're doing a perfect great circle and just going around with the body totally straight. What they're really doing is creating more torque on the way down, less torque on the way up, and it overcomes those resistive forces. All right, that ends part 1. Make sure you have a look at chapter 16, and I'll see you for part 2.